Today marks 10 days since I left Macon and returned to Europe. And of course, I'm in Poland, thinking about people in Ukraine. Today is the fourth day of the war Russia is waging against Ukraine. Um, I'll tell you a couple of stories. One is about what I did on Friday night. And I won't claim that I am the motivating force in changing the Germans' decision on SWIFT funding, but I went with a group of Americans and protested outside of the German embassy for their blocking the SWIFT sanctions. And I was very happy to find out yesterday by 2 o'clock that all of the Europeans had agreed to sanction the Russians or Russian banks with stopping the cash flows in. I think that's a good thing to do. I have mixed emotions about what else should be being done to support Ukraine, but I'm absolutely sure that the money that flows into the oligarchs' pockets needs to stop. And that Russia has to be isolated in this. And as much as it pains me for individual Russian citizens who are innocents in this conflict as much as anybody else, and who live miserable lives because they have a despotic dictator ruling their country, Russia has to be sanctioned for this. Has to be. There has to be some reason to send a signal to every other dictator in the world: you don't invade sovereign countries next to you just because you have a whim to do so. And so I think that that's really important. And I am sorry for the Russians that will suffer, because it will not always be the oligarchs. And in fact, the oligarchs will be protected from much of the suffering. But you cannot do this and have no consequence. So I'm all for sanctioning the Russians. I know a number of people here are very impatient that the United States would take some military action in the conflict, or that NATO would take some military action in the conflict. And I think that probably is not the best course of action at this point, although I certainly hear other voices saying different things. I do believe that Western-style democracy is under threat at the moment. I don't think that's an overstatement. I think that Western-style democracy is under threat by Vladimir Putin at the moment in Ukraine. And I think that to sacrifice Ukraine to a ruthless dictator has implications that go far beyond the Ukrainian borders. And even if they didn't go beyond the Ukrainian borders, still we have the obligation as fellow citizens of the world to protect the freedoms of others. Our own freedoms are at risk when we don't protect the freedoms of others. So I have mixed emotions about it. I do think that the United States engaging in this conflict would amp it up and probably lead to a much larger conflict that really terrifies me. I am hoping that there is going to be some kind of negotiated peace very soon. But I think that's just hope. I don't think that's probably reality. Iryna is a veteran of the Ukrainian military in Donbass, where the war has been raging in Lugansk and Donetsk for years. And she served in that region. I didn't know this until I looked it up today. 17% of the Ukrainian armed forces are women. And Iryna was one of them, and served her country in armed forces in the Donbass region, trying to protect the Ukrainian territory from the agitators that were being instigated by Russia to create problems in that area. When the war was coming to Kyiv last week, or just a few days ago, she and her husband, also a veteran, signed up or were activated to be part of the Rapid Response Guard protect the city of Kyiv as Russians were coming in. She was defending the part of Kyiv, kind of where I lived when I was there, and a Russian tank came. And she and her husband took their guns and aimed at the tank and defended their city. She and her husband were killed. And now their two children remember how brave their mother and father were, but they're living without their mother and father. And that to me is a heart-wrenching story of what war does. Yes, they're wonderful heroes, and I applaud their service to their country, and they gave the ultimate sacrifice. Why do those kids have to grow up without a parent? And yes, if they hadn't defended Kyiv from the Russians, if no one was defending Kyiv from the Russians, all of democracy around the world would be under threat. I'm not saying that they don't need to serve. I'm not saying that there isn't a need to make that sacrifice. But I'm just saying that it's horrific that they made that sacrifice. I found out about this story from one of my fellow Fulbrighters who's quite impressive. She's a West Point graduate who was doing a Fulbright project and had served 2 combat tours in the U.S. military and was a photojournalist and was doing a story about Ukrainian war veterans from the Donbass. And she told us the story of Iryna on our internal WhatsApp chat, and I wanted to share it. I wanted people to know about this because I think this is really what it's all about. Jen has recommended a charity to donate to. It's called Crossroads Ukraine. It's actually run by it's run in collaboration with another West Point alum who are working to evacuate Ukrainians at this point, and have been working to help to evacuate Ukrainians from the Donbass. If you'd like to contribute to it, I think this is a charity that touches me greatly, and it's a small base charity that I know who is, or has a good reputation with me. So I'm going to let you have the opportunity to do that. I'll show you my symbol of Ukraine, which is a sword with wings, and I'm standing or sitting with Ukraine here in Warsaw. I want the war over, and I hope that we can all hope and pray, if you will, for peace for Ukraine. And let's build a world where we don't do this anymore. We're better than this, I hope. I really hope we can build a world where we don't have to kill each other in order to find some way of coexisting. My thoughts for tonight.